Okay, so journey around the hips. So we'll start with this layer of, it'll be a very curious sequence. I have to admit to you, this is a little bit of a new blend for me studying. So it might be nice to have some variations on the themes that you're used to. So when you sit on your spine-wise lengthened bolster behind you, you're going to sit on the tail end and your bolster's up on a rolled blanket, block behind. Have your belt so it's easy to get, or maybe even place it on you to start. And a sandbag is nearby. Now, as you are on your back, and you adjust the leg pieces so that they're still bending. And I think that's important to notice. And I would personally just get back as fast as I can so my neck is not in a lurching position. But as you lower your head to that block, it does have this opportunity because we're off the bolster with our head. And why I have you doing that today is so you can work on this cross layer opener. And it takes a while for me to adjust it personally, since I'm not on the bolster with my head. And then once you have that stability and there's a little bit of openness at the neck, I want you to first get your belt so it's as high as it can be. So you'll be able to reach it overhead. And then if you can, get a sandbag either at ribs or at the legs. But I do want to give you a forewarning. If you do place it on the front of the legs, it might be a little much on the back of the knees. So you might have to send the feet a little bit apart so that the knees, even if they sense a little bit of a swoop, you're not completely hyperextending them, right? You might have them as wide, almost as wide as the mat. But I'm going to keep my sand on my ribs to work on my breathing muscles. But either way, hands get a hold of your belt. Now hold the belt so that the elbows point out and you can follow this, not necessarily staring at the screen, but just in your own zone. When you hold on to the belt and your elbows point out, notice the muscles, or even that it's a little bit of a quirky position for your shoulders and arms. And then as you reach up to the ceiling, you're going to find that you can take the hands out as wide as your loop is, right? It's a kind of a double belt, so it's a little bit thicker that way. And as you motion up, feel the up as much as possible before you begin the fullness of moving the arms back. So keeping that kind of blood flow in the arms is the up. And when you move back, it's selecting stretch, right? So it's like you get to select your focus. So I want to have my arms full of good circulation. This is also going to help later on down the line in my wrists, not necessarily in my yoga practice only, but in life in general. So working on that blood flow through the arms. And as your arms might go overhead, maybe that's a little much and you decide, another thing you can work with is putting your hands inside that loop. So I'm not gripping the belt with my fingers. It's kind of a more of a hands-free variation. And I move the arms back and my hands are just kind of slide inside the loop. I really like this one. Didn't know it until this moment, but it's an interesting conundrum about our wrists, right? Because they're naturally going to have some, degenerative issues, possibly just with their aging. So feeling ways to get blood flow around them and above them, because the fingers do enough work. They do enough walking. Open up through the energy of the pec muscles and let your eyes close so the breath cycle is felt. Notice that felt sense of in breath and out breath. And your body is your teacher. So if you find that this position with the arms becomes plenty of circulation, then I would just let your hands conveniently put the belt next to you, still buckled up, and let your arms relax on the floor. So then you have this opportunity to bring the legs a little closer, perhaps, reach through the heels, and find the different elements of awareness when cross layer chest opening pose occurs. So give your body the time to experience the shape and finding what's good about the shape. So as you in-breath, filter the air through the nose and empty out through the lungs. So feel how the mouth might move only on your out breath. So resting as many parts of the face instead of overactive. So keeping it a little bit more simple as time goes on. You know, I know some of us might feel like the back, it feels a little bit intense here with the arch. So before kind of, maybe giving up on the leg sense, you can bend your knees, of course, and maybe a slight bend is best. But before we shift completely into our cobbler's pose, I want you just to notice the opportunity of opening the chest as if you're trying to get your shoulder blade to push down to the bolster. Okay, so this might feel like if your sand is there, it might be a little much to have that extra weight to articulate that movement. Just feel the arms where it's kind of a luxury to have arms to hold open. And then as we begin the process of transition, it will be a few moments of moving some of your clutter around, but it's also finding that inner connections, right? So the connections between the poses are very important to make them smooth and helpful. So take another breath here, feeling as you make room for the inhale. And out breath. So do you hold the breath up at the higher chest, or do you feel that you can inhale and let the core move? Now that's probably a little more challenging here than it is in the next pose, but just notice how the neck, all these areas feel maybe a little challenged in this full stretch. So as we slide the feet in, knees bend, reach back for your block, and I want you to actually lift your head. The block's probably right under it, huh? And then put that block down besides you, anywhere is fine. And then as you slide down the bolster and adjust things, okay, you're going to get the other blanket and place that behind your head. Maybe it's easier than said than done. So you've got now this extra support. Now, before we add the belt, feel how the arch is maybe a little more flat in the back line than the last pose for the shoulder blades. They may kind of widen out here. So I want you to let the arms reach to the sides of the legs and then hold on. Maybe you have to hold your pants, okay, or your shorts, but you're going to try to get a pretty good grip with your hands on the legs, and then bring your head forward, but not trying to tuck your chin down, but forward. And then when you move up to feeling the back of the pelvis touch the bolster, this is where I want you to coordinate your core muscles. So get your belt, okay, and then bring your knees out. You might just cross the legs to come up to sitting and feel your sitting bones again. And take that belt over and around the torso zone. And then of course, I try to get the buckle so it's positioned where I can pull on it towards me. Sometimes it works out according to plan. So when I take that belt and scoop up my feet, yeah, for some reason the measurement is a little small. I grew since the last pose, just in those minutes, right? So I'm going to tighten it down. Now I have it loose enough. I want to find where this is pulling in this back surface and kind of spreading that circulation so it helps to move my knees open, to put my blocks under my legs. If your ball kind of went away somewhere, you want to make sure it's nearby if you're using that eventually. And then as you lower down, those that are going to use the sandbag could place that again from heart to belly, or to go sand free, or one sand on each thigh. So now as we come back to this kind of nice pairing pose with the last shape, the openness of the ribs, the centering of the hips, and then perhaps you move your blocks so that they're in a comfortable place where it pushes a little bit to your skin. But if you can possibly let the legs do more pushing into the blocks, right? So that's another channel of awareness, is how do my legs relax into the blocks, right? Sometimes the blocks hold them up and they're shaky. So you'll spend the energy here on these two sets of levers, the legs and the arms, and how they can both relax into gravity. And then if you have sand on the ribs, you can keep that for the element of breathing strength. And you might work without the sand and feel that awareness conveniently moving with the pulse of inhale and the surrendering of exhale. Let your energy stay somewhat contained with that breathing. Not that you can't be a loudmouth with it, but it might be conducive to settling your nervous system and also all the work internally to experience the inhale through the nose. The belly relaxes, and the exhale out through the mouth. Unless you want to keep the mouth closed the whole time and focus on breathing with the nose only. So it's up to you. I find comfort with exhaling out of my mouth quietly. Just kind of feel where all the vents are for your breathing skills. Equalizing the energy of the arms and the legs. And then finally, feel the shoulders participate enough that when they move back, there's just a simple, almost like there's a door at the center of the chest, like at the heart awareness. And it just kind of, it slides a little bit open. So keeping that open, kind of cracked open a little bit with that. And maybe the shoulders will kind of pull themselves a little forward. They do that even on your back. It's quite interesting what the habits of forward motion can do to our shoulder bones. But feel the shoulders like they're meant to settle back with gravity. And then we'll shift in a moment. So you have the leg position this way, and we're spending a brief time with it, not 5 minutes or anything, but feel how the knees move out. So it's kind of the basin of the pelvis, and the knees stretch out from that basin. So it's like a bowl, okay? Now the hip frame is going to go next. So you'll unbuckle, and then as you move the left knee to point up, okay, that knee can obviously flop back out to the block. It could, but what might be nice is to get a ball or move the block a little higher up on the outside of that left leg. And you could do this half butterfly flap, that's fine. But I'm gonna put the ball over to that outer left leg. I'm gonna kind of scoot it into the higher outer leg. And then I'll hold the ball or block and then point the knee up so the bottom of the foot is down. Now this right knee is open, so when you move the knee closer up towards your right arm, which is probably pretty limited how you can slide that leg up because you are connected to all this tissue, right? It's not like you're just like a piece that can take its part out. So when you bring your knee to point out, notice the visceral connection. So you're going to lift up that right foot. You know this pose. So you place the right foot to the left knee or across the ankle of that right leg to the left knee. And then when you lean into the ball, okay, and sometimes the block is already there and you kind of touch that, but at any rate, you let the body lean over and you need the leg so the left leg's a little up from the ground. That's why we use an object under it. And then you can hold onto the right knee with your left hand and try that energy of pulling back. So you're moving the leg towards your body. And I would be interested in if you kind of explore the radius of that movement. It's not very far left or right. It's, millimeter movements, but register the sensation in the right hip and then really let that hip get a little flooded with the awareness here. And I want to encourage you to let the hand direct the leg towards you or a little bit across, but not to push the leg into the hand. Like you're not, it does feel like it's holding and there's some energy connection of the leg held, but instead of trying to push the leg away, you're guiding the leg towards you or a little bit across, right? That's okay. It depends on the feeling in that right upper leg into the hip. And maybe you don't feel like pelvis, but you certainly feel the muscles and kind of the grit of it, or the grip and what happens with that. A few more moments here. Breathing slow. Try to center the breath low in the belly, because you can bring the breath anywhere. It might be more of a visualization at this point. Or you might not see your breath in your knee. But you have awareness that things are a little full body. Okay, now, mentally take a kind of a snapshot of what the sensation is in your right hip. You can kind of bottle this up. I don't think you want to keep that sensation, but it does get that blood flowing into the hip. Okay, so as you let go of this knee and you switch over to the second knee, you'll bring the right foot down. And last time we did a little bit more floppy motion. So I'll put the ball next to my right thigh, let that knee kind of open and move back to center. Half butterfly. So my right leg has a ball on the upper outer leg. Again, you can use a blanket, you can use a block. Anything that will keep it a little up. It's just at the tight under my right outer leg. And then that left foot's going to come up, cross the ankle to the right leg, and lean your body weight over to the right. And be skillful. It's as if like this left leg is between two planes of glass almost. You don't want that knee to jerk towards you. You want to keep it open. So it is a little bit technical with that array of movement. So, you might be able to hold your hips with this movement, going back and forth, and then find the still point and hold on to the left knee with the right hand and feel the hand creep over that knee. Good. And then when you have a good grasp of the leg, knee part, that is, yeah, I don't think it would be helpful to hold on to the shin. Kind of feeling the different places of holding. I think the knee is the best spot as I figure things out as life goes on here. But you know, you do want to find that these two connectors from the hand, the right hand to that left hip, that your right hand is doing the work of trying to loosen that up. So feel when you draw across with that left leg. Feel when you pull the leg a little bit towards you. And if you kind of tense up anywhere in the back or the guts or anything, you know that you're doing too much. So if you're straining, then feel other places. Maybe your right foot, you're trying to put the bottom of the foot down. You want to be on the side. The left hand can be relaxed. I'm working more on a calming variation to focus on the hip. But if you like to stretch your arm back, you're welcome to do that, of course. You're free to motion. You're free to move your pose anyway. But the body weight is still heavy on the bolster. So feel the body weight back. Recline, enjoy. It's good stuff, right? It's good medicine for the circulatory deposits, right? In these parts that can be very stiff. So try to work with that blend of breathing and the motion of that leg simply kind of crossing. Notice this is similar to some of our twists, but it's isolated. That we're not turning the rib cage as much. At least not yet. Okay, so taking a moment here when you feel, do you take the hand off the knee first or do you bring the knee back to its starting spot? So you might kind of get a feel for that. Like if you guide it back up to center, or if it's better to let it go and then let it go on its own. Right? Sometimes that can be a very comfortable shape. And then when you come out, you're going to back into Baddha Konasana without the belt and feel when the knees are open. Is there a freer flow of circulation through the legs? It might feel like it's pretty easy to position here. And the rib cage might feel a little bit more full. And now what we're going to do is work all the way through the rib cage. So we're trying to band in the hips, give them a little bit of that warm up time. And then I want you to let the knees windshield wiper. So you'll bring your feet, your knees up to point up and then slide the feet. Hips distance is probably a little too short of a stance. So what we'll do is we'll take the blocks so they're not in your path of your legs, put them a little bit to the sides, and then let the legs windshield wiper. If you slide down the bolster a little bit, that's completely fine because we windshield wiper often flat on their back, but I want you to be protected in your neck. So you might have to make sure that blanket is under your head. And then as the knees go side to side and shift, kind of feel the wide space of your feet and that movement. And I want you to try to develop the movement so it's a little swoopy, right? Kind of ribbon-like. So it's not as stuck, like push point. It's kind of a little bit swoopy because knees bend, they kind of scoop around. Even if you have to visualize a ribbon or something. Body isn't always a ribbon. Okay, so keep that motion for a few more moments. And then we're gonna continue on to the next step. So we'll move towards the left. We're gonna roll your torso over to the left. And now I want you to come up to sitting on the ground next to the bolster and then slide your bolster away from the blankets, at least so it's independent. And then make a blanket stack. So they're both kind of quarter foldish, somewhat like that. Maybe the bottom one isn't rolled up anymore. And then I like something on the inside of my right knee, so this whole travel space of my leg can be supported, something on the inside of the right knee. And then as I lengthen down, you might add a block overhead. We're going to take side sage and recognize when you get your sand up on you to your side, since we have been focusing, kind of dominating the focus somewhat onto the lower bones in the last few moments. I want you to feel that you can work on getting that circulation banded together with the upper. So maybe the sand goes from hip to the ribs, so it's lengthwise on the side. If that's a little quirky for your balance, then you can turn the sandbag horizontally across maybe your hips, okay? So reaching with the ribs, hand can be on the blanket, it can be on the block, it could be in the air, the right hand, but we're on the left side body, and our sensation zone is to elongate the side. Okay, so full fill where your neck is comfortable. For many of us, it might be turning your head so the left side of your head is relaxing. Maybe your blanket needs to get kind of bulked up a little bit, but continue in this experience of the reaching side body, right? We're reaching all the front body. Now we're reaching through the side body. We're kind of basic in this class, aren't we? Kind of basic stuff with a lot of words. Simply breathe. These look great, the ones I see. You know, just let the arm on that top work its way to experience connection into the rest of your things, right? Into your ribs, feeling it connection threading into the back. And filter the air in through the nose. Feeling how the rib cage moves. Now, if the body leans left more than towards the back side, towards the right, see if you can find a connection where you're feeling your right leg has a little lead moving back at the foot level, and the hips, especially this right side, you can almost feel that the hip, that right hip is trying to point towards the left. So towards the, not necessarily the left arm, but you're trying to open up to that hip flexor. So many of you would know about poses like when you're working in dancer pose, but it's where you hold your foot, your hand reaches back and down to the foot behind you, and you reach it back and up. And so it's a quad stretch, it's a front leg opener, but we're not holding our foot today. But feel how that front of that right leg is working its way to that shaping. And what prevents us from getting it fully moving is all these quirks on the side. So there's so many things. So what I want you to explore for a moment is how that side is lengthening. Take the sand away for the moment. Now, notice the sand was, for some of us, it's on this side layer of the leg, regardless if it's straight down or across. And we are going to use that layer when we sit upright in the moment. But I want you, for the most part, to feel when you're sandless, okay? Sand free. And then feel where that right side chest can move open towards the ceiling. If that's tender for you with your chest muscles or your shoulder, then please, modify for your needs. But you're going to come out of the shape by feeling the ribs turn. Now, notice it's kind of like a pile of ribs. It's not like you articulate and you can do these intricate movements. We learn those in cat pose, right? But remember, this area is kind of there's organs inside the front, so it's fairly limited. But when you turn and you come up, we're going to kind of feel how this core does squish and move and all those things squish. So you're going to come up to sit on your bolster, survive the side beam. And we're sitting so that we cross the right leg in front of the left. And then as you're in this, it's not really crisscross, is it? But I think that's how some people call it. But right leg crossed in front of left. Get a sandbag on the right upper leg. Okay, so you notice some continuation of experience here. Right upper leg. My left knee needs something under it, personally. So I'm going to use a ball because it's there, but you could use a block or you could stuff a blanket in if it's not touching the ground easily, right? If that's not natural for my joint, then I stuff something under it so it's a little more comfortable. Okay, so now you'll take your ribs spatially and pivot towards the left, and I'm going to use a block. I think 2 would be better. And move it over to the top, well, kind of to the left side. It's not top left side, but I'm turning so this whole waistband, my right leg with the sand, my hands over to the left. So they're pointing to about somewhere between 10 and 11 o'clock is the aim for my blocks. Of course, you can do this with your blocks flat. You can do this without your blocks. But I find that the limitation is if I put my hands down, maybe I could do it, but I'm kind of I'm losing a deeper breath. And I also feel a little bit uncomfortable in my neck. So this gives me a little more support higher up. Yeah, even better. Let's say you want to go all the way to the high block and you want to bring your elbows down. That would be pretty nice because you're not going to be using your sensing gripper in your hand holding on and tightening your shoulder. So, but this requires a little bit of mobility in the joint to get this low. It may not seem very low, but I'm trying to keep all the poses feeling pretty full indeed and supported. If your right leg needs something under it, if that sandbag's making it a little weary, you can also use another blanket, stuff it in under the right leg. So I want you to feel that the legs in this directional angle, cross-legged, is supported. Okay, so I'm aiming the arms both towards the left so I can sense the stretch into that right hip. Now keep that directional towards the left with your upper body. And then if you have at least one block, it really only requires one, you're going to move the one block next to the bolster so it's right next to it. And mid-height could be best. I point it away from the bolster. And then I'm going to push that left hand out and stretch the right side body. So I'm going to turn, lift the right arm up and rotate. And this rotation could continue. And I could try to oscillate a little more, but I'm going to stay with this and turn my head so I look down towards the floor to the left. Just straight down towards the space between the bolster. I don't have to keep my eyes open though, but feel that side sensation. Yeah, it's different than when you're relying on your bolster, but it has some basic elements of circulation. Okay, now we're going to use this right thread. So let's say your right arm is tired, and even if you don't have it still up, that's fine. But I want you to use that as a thread. So you're going to turn to your right and bring the left hand to the right knee. Now my habit is my knee goes up to get my knee's going up towards my hand. It's like a habit of, it's not necessary. So what I'm going to do is try to get my hand down towards the knee and use my stomach muscles to get that motion. And the right arm wraps around your waist. So try to get around the waist. If you want to put your hand on the blankets, that's fine. But I'm trying to get us directionally to work our torso to get the turn through these muscles. Like there's something in there that has muscle. I know it's there. Know it's there. So I can kind of squish around in my, muscles, and I'm kind of drawing the obliques this way and so forth. But feel when you hold on to the knee that the knee is kind of going down. Trying to not yank on it. I'm trying to let the knee weight just go down. And that doesn't let me twist that far, but this is what I got. This is my honest twist. So feel the in-breath, and then exhale, turn. Okay, feel the body rotate. If it doesn't go very far, but you're mentally striving, see if you can plug into the breath. Acceptance, here it is. This is your pose. Okay, now the arms are kind of wrapping around, so it's kind of a nice setup for the shoulder blade. So if this left arm is across, let's take the right arm away from the back. See if you can stretch your right arm forward across the left. So it's just simply intertwine the arms. So you have that kind of hug position starting. Intertwine to open up through the shoulders. So if this feels like not a big shoulder stretch for you, it is a shoulder stretch. So rotator cuff. So let that arm have that crossing, right arm over left, and lifting up the elbows. And if the neck kind of juts the chin forward, try to find the crown of the head up. Now move the arms open and straight back. Okay. Now the hands, traditionally there might be you reach them together, but let's just be simple. If you can touch the blankets, that's wonderful here. And work with the shoulders moving back. Just feel it. And maybe your neck tries to send itself toppling back the head, but feel that the neck is an important piece here. It's going to keep your brain on, right? So you might let your head nod side to side. You might tilt your ear to the shoulder. Just kind of stretch a little bit through the neck. What works for you? I know head tilts are very tempting, aren't they? Because I feel like they do quite a bit. But if you do a head tilt, try to let your center of gravity in the neck, right around the thyroid, stay centered. Lots of words for one focus, huh? Okay. Now with the body lifting through the chest muscles, then let go of that, reach back to the blanket, and then we'll come out of this shape on this side. If you need to do any seated cat-cow movements before we come to the next side stage, you can always do this where you sit centered and let your spine move forward and back. These are interesting to blend in. And then as we come down, you kind of feel when you take the spine away from these two angles it's used to, which is either the arch or the flex. And then when we uncross, you might go ahead and slide down off the bolster. Okay. And we're centering to our second sage pose. So we're going to bring the right knee over towards the bolster and the ball. I'm using a ball on the inside of the left leg. And as you lean into it, those muscles in the torso might be starting to get a little workout. So work on that reach of the waist to the bolster. And if there's little parts of the waist that are kind of scrunching up, spend the energy on getting that bolster close as could be. Stretching the ribs over, lengthen. Yep, if you've got a round bolster, it's really nice for that too. So you can get the whole rotunda of the ribs in their dynamic movement. Each side could be a little different for your neck, right? You might go, well, that was good on the last side with the blanket low, but now maybe the side of your neck needs a little higher. Okay, so go by feeling. And then you decide, is your arm going to go over to the block or the floor? or will the arm relax down? Okay, so feel the weight of your head. You make sure that you can feel that if you're slightly sensitive or you're holding your neck up, you'll know it if the cue is to relax the weight of your head. So if you can feel the neck gripping and you're trying to keep it up again, get the blanket a little higher so that you can honestly relax your neck. And the left arm maybe goes over, maybe it stays down. Breathing. Left side lengthens. All the side muscles with a little bit of weight on them. Now feel where the position of the left leg is helping lead that connectivity through the leg parts, but that movement is stretching the front of the left hip. So this idea of trying to push your hips towards the right, the whole idea of like lengthening, like I mentioned, there are poses where you hold your foot behind you to stretch the front bones and also the muscle tissue, right? So just be sensitive if your back isn't particularly like you trying to move your leg farther behind you than you don't. But I want you to get a few more moments here before we cycle up. Yep, I'm trying to move the hips and kind of pull so you're stretching through the front of that left hip. It's kind of an interesting isolation exercise when the right leg can't be part of that. Okay. Now, when you begin to take any sand away, this left side that you have that layer of support or movement is where we're going to get the trickle effect down to that left hip. Okay, so bring the left knee, scoop it up towards the right. Okay, and then feel when you come up, maybe your positioning is to take a seat up at your own pace, and then kind of get a feel for, you know, this whole side track. So our side track moments ago was this way with this leg, right? It was reaching. So now we're kind of spiraling that leg around through the hoop of the hip hoop. It'll be called hip hoop class. All right, and then bring the sand to the left leg. Yeah, this side could be a different experience for the ball knee, right? Having something under your knee. Maybe this side doesn't have as much of a stiffness on the joint. It's always a little interesting to just get to the next side and figure that out. So you might work with that cat-cow before you set sail to the side reach. You can always explore a little bit of this, especially if you're kind of feeling a little stiff or just the muscles and joints, things get a little cruddy. You might just get movement in between your poses, your own certain stuff you like to do. And then when we start to move to that right, I think blocks are good. It's definitely adding a lot more gear to your pose, I guess, but you can add the blocks to the right. Now I just kind of put them there. They're not perfectly set, but my arms would be like that, right? They're not, this arm is going to be farther back, the left arm anyway. So when I try to get them the same, it doesn't always end up right for your inside. So track it like it's a sliding pose. Right, so the blocks are towards the right, a little different. They might be going to 1 o'clock, maybe at 1 and 2. They certainly aren't going to 3 or 4 though, huh? Not yet. So take the blocks so that they seem to meet a little bit more. Feel the side travel into the left hip. Let's just say your left knee and this whole leg needs a little more support and you're kind of using all your props, it seems. For those of you needing that, you would simply take your blanket and place that there. All right, so you can use a blanket, that's kind of comfortable. And then I can use this mid-body movement towards the right. So be for a few moments, like maybe your head lower, maybe you put your block heights a little higher and you put your elbows on the blocks. You can also track the upper body leaning down to get a feel for the spine. There's a spine in there. Now as we move a block to the right side of your bolster, got my block over here and it's low. Actually, it's mid-height, that's where I like it. So it's the second setting. And then send the block out towards the right. Let this left arm either move behind you, tilt, or it stretches over the side. It can go either way. Both could be, as advanced as you like. So you might go with, what does it feel internally when I lean to my right side? And I can feel that waist sensation working, lengthening. Yeah, sometimes holding on to it with that left hand and just getting that traction of leaning is great. Okay, you can turn your head towards the right. You can keep it so it leans with you. Breathing. Perfect. Give it a few more moments. Yeah, seated poses can be a little bit arduous sometimes. Now, when you start that process, I know it's not start, you just get to come up. When you move up and you take, reach the right hand to that left leg. Okay, see if you can reach it and get the arm and the waist to do the movement versus grabbing the knee and pulling it. So I want you to try to get that right hand across to that left leg. Then the left hand can go around the waist, right? Or you can keep it on the hand on the shoulder and encourage this turn. But likely this muscle mass, the stiff parts, right? That will want you to pull the knee and use other things that are accessory bones to pry around. Notice where you pry. Maybe the blanket behind you is really good to have. You can make it any height you like. That might be better for some of us, but feel the waist is kind of slippery movement, right? It can rotate, it can round, it can arch. So get a feel for movements in the torso to help you get a hold of that knee easily. And then you conveniently turn. You want to turn on the vine of the spine so you're spiraling with the ribs and massaging the organs, not that you're kind of tearing up work in your back. You want to be a little careful of the spine, kind of that keep the dignity through that spine lifting tall. And then let the body rotate along that axis. Okay, so let the spine center and turn the torso. And you might let your eyes close. Right? You might center your focus. Just feeling the body turning. And now when you reach that left hand back and up, I want you to take the arm over, cross it, and intertwine the arms and get a feel of lifting the elbows up. Okay, so center the elbows to lift. And you might feel that the spine works its way. And remember that head tilting option we had. You don't have to have the arms in this combination. They could be reaching the hands around towards the shoulders. Feel that center through the back. Okay, just a few more moments. Now, this whole centering pattern has had some experience of working your way in the center of gravity into your pelvic floor. So when you unwind through the arms, we're going to work our way to roll the shoulders back to get a feeling of this motion. Okay, just feel the shoulders moving back and around. And then we're going to take our sand away. And then when we come back to the seat, what we'll do is we'll take a blanket. We just want one. This is a shift that's a little different. Uncross and then push your bolster forward and take your feet to a wide, I guess it's not really a stance, but I like to call this wide stance. Because when we sit with our feet out and we have this openness through the legs, it's like this bolster is a good measuring tool for this in some ways. I don't think this is an often experience we have the bolster set in the center. So it's between my knees, right? So that's about the points that I have. If that's too much stretch, then guess what you do? You push the bolster forward and you bring the legs closer. So I want you to find what is a pretty good match for you for this balance. And then working towards holding that center of gravity in the sitting bones and the spine materializes, right? I don't know, does it materialize? Curious. Flex your feet real strong. So you're feeling the bones of the feet and it's pointing from the heel to the kind of the, I want to say the roof of the foot, but that's not such a thing. Sounds fun. But the balls of the feet kind of lift up the foot palate. Okay. Now, if you got that bolster there, I want you to kind of squeeze into it a little bit. You know, we're going to do hip and pelvic floor, a lot of that. So kind of get a little squeeze in towards that energy and then try to maintain the leg tone. So it stays in this very toned position. And then get the bolster, legs don't change, but the bolster goes up on its end. And then as you lean forward, here's the challenge, is that not letting the legs roll in and get kind of sloppy. I want you to feel the tone of the legs, the bones are toned, and then maybe you lean forwards. So kind of tilt your body weight to this wide stance. Yeah, no need to put the legs out farther. No need to get into the splits. That's not our focus here. So lean into it. Let your head lean down between the arms. Okay, now with that reach, breathe. Okay, now feel how the spine is fairly, you know, one focus, right? It's leaning down, it's arching. So now when you round your back, so you flex the spine, round the spine, and then curl a little bit, that rounded back, kind of cat spine to come up to sitting. Inhale. Okay, and then now we're going to set the bolster across the mat. And we'll bring our knees back in towards center and we're going to lower on our back. So what I want you to place is the blanket back, but I want you to have, to be honest, no blanket under your head if you can go with that. So you're going to put your feet up on top of the bolster. And then when you lower down, you'll add I think we'll do it. We'll go with it. We're going to add a belt. Okay. If you need your blanket under your head, just so you're comfortable to get this belt on, that's fine. But we'll add the belt. So we're working quite a bit with this whole feature of pelvis, spine, and then we're starting to get a little bit back into the hip. So when you connect the belt around your legs, I know when it snaps on this recording, that can be pretty sharp. So yeah, my apology. When you put the belt around, I have it so that my belt is as close to the knees as I can bring it, right? Still in the flesh of my legs, but as close to the knees. And then when I set my feet on the bolster, I want you to sense that you're kind of lifting up your chest muscles. So I know this blanket idea under your head is usually what many of us will need, feel like we have a necessity for it. But I want you to kind of collect this movement of your spine, kind of the three different parts of the spine, right? And you've got your different layers of movement: cervical, thoracic, and lumbar, right? The different curves. So when we bring our arms over, like you reach them up and back, feel that kind of suspension of pushing into your feet, lifting up in your hips, and stretching your hips up and your arms move back. And they kind of land on, for me, on my blanket, which is perfect. Works really well. But you might, I know some of you might want your blanket into your head. That's okay. But feel for those that don't too. Feel for anybody. But now when you lower the spine, can you really work like you're doing cat motion? So you're feeling the spine without the neck lifting the head up. So you're going to let the spine lengthen all the way towards the tail. And then feel what happens to the flesh mixture once you've already got your tailbone space down. It's like it kind of flumps down, right? So I want you to work with this this depth of circulation. So let's get into this one. So we'll let the elbows be by the sides like robot arms. And then you'll lift up your hips, okay? So feel a lot of definition working in your legs and the front of the hip bones. And add a block. Then if you need a blanket under your head, I know some may feel like they still miss that. You can still slide in a flat blanket. But add a block at the low or the mid height. And you want to place it so that when you lie on the block, it feels like it holds your pelvis up. Still with it, okay. All right, so you've got your pelvis lifted, you're supported. And then once you basically trust the block, you make sure it's sturdy enough, you let your body weight kind of empty into that, okay? Now my knees are pointed a tiny bit out and I want to work with that right now. So my feet hopefully aren't turning out wildly. But when I have my knees, kind of my legs rest out into the belt, like everything I'm responding to using the props, like I'm resting on them. I'm supporting my legs with the band of the belt, holding them. I don't have to effort a whole lot in these places now. And then your arms are going to be down by the sides, and bridge pose is often taught with the arms down. But in restorative bridge, it's taught often with the arms open too. So I want you to kind of feel what is the best for your shoulders right now and for your mental conundrum, right? So what would be the most positive balance for your shoulders? And then as the next 30 seconds or so go, we're going to keep that awareness of the legs resting into the props. Trying to change the circulation a little bit in the hips with time. And just simply feel the belly move with the breath. Expanding and contracting. Now, if your arms are open to the sides, I want you to bring them in a little closer. Okay, and feel the shoulders motion back. It's good to have a floor, but it is a limiting factor for your chest opener, isn't it? It's like you want a little chunk on each side there that could help you open more, but you've got a floor that's even on for the whole body. So as you push down into your shoulders, get a feel when you let the legs slide to lengthen. So you got the belt, so that's great. It's going to hold you from spinning the knees out. But you use the limitation of it. You still don't want to try to force the leg wider. You don't want to tighten the belt. So the training is on working with the ribs opening, right? It's kind of funny because it's almost as if you're trying to train to relax the belly more, right? But it still feels pretty lengthened out. It's elongating the core chamber, but that's going to help right in this pose for your back circulation, so it doesn't get a little, it doesn't compress as much. So relax the front, let that spread to the back. Okay, so these front hip bones, right, into the side of the leg. Now, as you begin to come back, I know this coming back might be the challenge, coming back up with the feet. And then as you push down, since you're already using your feet now, lift up the hips and slide that block away. Okay. And then as you let your spine trickle down, can you really get a good, at your own musculature, a good length of the spine, each of those segments, especially thoracic, lower mid-back, behind the heart, all the way down through the track of the spine. And then feel where that part of the back is hinging for your knees to bend this way. Okay. Now you'll bring the knees in towards the chest, and I want you to feel the belt this wide. Notice how it is when your knees your legs move out into the belt, just like this. Okay. And then as the thighs are motioning closer towards your torso in that position, you're going to unbuckle because it's a good time for that. Release the belt to the side. And then as you feel that hold, we're going to lower down just to move the bolster to the right side of your mat on the side. So it's outside the mat boundary. And then let the right leg lengthen and keep that right thigh so you can feel the buttock centering down the leg. So the back of the leg from the buttock to the back of the leg lengthen. So the foot feels like it's straight down. And then can you use that right hand to draw the left leg over to the bolster? And then you'll start to roll on that bottom leg, the right outer hip. So the leg is maybe a micro bend, but I'd rather have you keep it a micro bend, but not a full bend and kick of the foot under. So you have the leg basically lengthening even if you're on your hip. Okay. This is a good time to add a ball to the sacrum, to add a sandbag to the exterior left leg, and a blanket. That's even more important. That was the missing piece for me there. Was what is wrong? It's the blanket under my head. I need that. So add those supports. And then with the muscles fairly vibrant from the last pose, right? They're fairly full. Then you can cater to this position and just feel where the left arm opens. The right leg might really need to bend now. It might start going, I'd like to bend a little more. And you'll know that if the sand goes on, that's likely going to happen. The bottom leg will bend, right, to compensate. So what your work is on this side body, this rib spatially to open into the hip. Good. And then let that left arm just be wherever it's comfortable. It might be low. It might be straight open from the shoulder joint. Yeah, I don't think cactus arm works too good on this one. That's interesting because it doesn't really work with a twist. Your arm can go down, but it's not meant to be that your elbow would bend and your hand goes up. Right? It's like all the way up into the spine that it dictates that. Now the hand's comfortable where you are. Maybe one hand's on the belly. Maybe that other hand is simply open to the right. But slowing down the nervous system. Feel if this is a full hip stretch, if you're feeling more than just like a very small segment of your left glute, maybe you feel it spreads a bit through the whole leg, at least the upper half of it. above the knee. Right, that's interesting. You're not going to feel it below the knee, right? It's specifically isolated above. That's unless you kick your leg out a little bit more, but take a few more of these moments with that left knee bending and really suction that circulation through the leg. Now, we are going to be eventually moving into a full legs up wall today. So you get a lot of circulation from all you've done with your legs and your hips to kind of drain. This would be a good time to kind of muster up that focus through the leg. Yeah, if your your right leg is starting to bend even more, that's going to give you a message it's kind of time, right? So some days you can do this longer than others. But when you do start to come out, let's keep the traction. So we're going to go towards moving the ball. If you don't have one, no big deal. If you do, you might massage under that glute that you just were working, right? So if you have a ball, you might roll onto your back and then lift up and put the ball under your left buttock and massage so it's higher on the buttock, right? The glute medius, it's not very low, right? And near the leg, it's completely closer to the back when you're massaging. So connecting that, if you don't have a ball, what you'll do is you'll take figure 4 pose. So left foot crosses to right knee, but the hands hold the knee in. So you're gonna hug that leg in. You could do a little both. You could do some self-massage and then figure 4 pose. But it likely will feel spot on to that left inner thigh and the glute. Kind of brings them both together. Right foot can be, relaxed, not lifting it up, not extra intensity anywhere, just specifically through the glute. Relax your breath. Okay, now as you uncross, I want you to take the knees and legs to point up, feet flex, hands besides the hips, palms down, and then feel the legs straight. Shift a little forward, so it's as if your heel points are heavy, but the feet are mildly flexed. You don't want to be overly aggressive about it, but get a feel where your tailbone is. If your tail is kind of starting to lift up, well, you know what I mean. But if you feel like there's a little space there and it's not grounded, you're going too far. So your limit might be just like a couple inches. Just be honest with it, right? Honest. There's limits with the posterior core. I'm even letting it go a little farther than I need to. So if it gets a little shaky, bring it back up. And then bring that right knee in towards the chest, left leg down without holding onto the leg. Right now, try to use your own muscular coordination and the switch. So left knee in towards the chest. Only goes so far without hands, doesn't it? Right leg is straight down. Take the switch one more time, right leg in, left leg down. And then feel the muscles in the back working to switch the leg one last time. All right, now slide the right foot in or whatever foot straight down. Bring the feet back to center, hips distance, and then take the bolster over to the left side, okay? Now, as you get ready for this crossover on this right leg going over to the bolster, be sensitive to how the spine is lengthened, almost as if you try to make that spine imprint into the mat. And again, if that blanket is supporting you under your head enough, you will find that full imprint even between the blades. Okay, left leg down, right leg crosses, and maybe less thinking about it, just kind of going for it. You can see if that left leg is getting bendy, right? If it's starting to want to soften, feel a little micro bend. And then when you add the ball, that's usually not where it's a changing leg bend position, but it's usually the sandbag that progresses that. So notice the weight on the hip. Now this is weight bearing work. So when you take the leg across and you put that weight to the thigh or even closer to the knee, that lower leg, the rudder, right, is going to see if it can bend a bit more. So work to the best that you can. It might start with the leg basically lengthened, so straight-ish. And then I just do the lightest bit of bending. So I want you to have it even as you can. Stretch open the right arm with all your clutter around. Okay. Left hand can be on the torso, experiencing that you're breathing or making sure that you are. And or it could be out anywhere. Yeah, and feel your head roll to the right, at least on this side. Let your neck gently turn. Now the simplicity here is for the focus in hip. Doesn't mean that you have to push it and make details that are at all impulsive. It might be just that simple relaxation stirring up in the ribs and the breathing and the brain. But the lower quadrant is getting quite a bit of circulation. So it's great to kind of cycle the awareness and let yourself feel. Now it's convenient to use the ball if you have one to massage the back of that right buttock, right? Where the zone of circulation is stemming from. So that could be an obvious transition for you. But you might go ahead and go to figure 4 pose too. So if you have a ball, you remove that from the sacrum area, right? Even temporarily, and then the sand goes. That's really important. Sand free. Okay. Now, if you're gonna use the ball, you'll need to reset it right when you get onto your back. So you can kind of roll onto it. Of course, if this doesn't work for you, you'll do figure 4 pose. But massaging through that glute and just feel that traction through the glutes or the glute B. Okay. There's a B in the glute. And then if you move to figure 4 pose, you can conveniently cross that right foot to the left knee and then remove any ball and hug the leg in. So get a good scoop of that leg in towards the chest. So what I sense just from this cycle of poses is that's kind of the next layer we're going to work in is to hands, knees, a little dynamic movements. And then we'll do an inversion. So it might be kind of a different cycle of sequencing, but heck, it's good to have variety, I think. And so when you're clutching the leg here, the back on the floor is really great, right? The floor is super for back releasing, but it's also kind of a springboard for us when we work on our standing or all fours positions, right? So it's kind of a nice balance that we're going to work through. So feel that tug of the hands behind the left leg. Okay. The controlled tug. All right. So when we are going to uncross, see where we're going with this cycle of movements. Oh, this is even more exciting. Okay. So uncross. Now we're going to do the same position when we come up, but you'll get it when we get there. So I don't think you can turn on the other side from here. Let's see. So uncross through the legs and then hold it back. If you want to roll to the side to come up, that's fine. But you might like to go from the version of spine layer, hold legs, and then push through the feet when your hands are on the back of the legs, and then roll up. Works pretty good. Okay, now take the blanket from behind you across. Let's see, gotta keep it together with this. We're gonna bring right knee out, left leg back to pigeon, same pose, right, that we just had in our back. It's short pigeons. They're short, little tiny pigeons. So the right knee is open, but I want you to have your bolster across your mat and place the elbows on top. And so you have this arch of the spine. Okay, so manifest the arch through the, well, I guess it's not a hip arch, right? That's an interesting topic. We could probably have a whole unmuted class about that one someday, to talk about that arch in its felt sense into the back. But feel where this is. You don't have to have your hands in prayer position. You can have the hands holding your head or wherever they could be. But where that right knee moves open, okay? All right, so let's swap the pose to the other side. So swing that left leg forward, around and cross. So you do a little bit of a break dance to get to the other side. So left leg forward. Now, if the knee is kind of poking out, it's good to go one side and then right to the next and kind of feel the different ways that you center your front pelvis. Because it's unusual kind of journey through your movements. Yeah, so let the hip bones center through the arch of the pelvis into the lumbar spine. So it's very significant because this is such a bendy spot in our lower back, you know, and it can also be an achy spot too. So now give a few more seconds here, not a long pigeon. Tiny, tiny pigeons. Okay, now where we have the hands pushing the bolster a little bit up front, bring the hands to the floor and then toes under right foot. It's going to be good to get back. Bring the left foot back and alternate to stretch the legs. Alternate walking through the bottoms of the feet, but feel as you, I don't know if you can think of this as a massage for the bottom of the foot, but I'd like to think it was, but it's not a real massage on my foot, but it does move it that way. Okay, so play with that pattern of moving your feet, alternating the bend. And then let's walk our hands back towards the feet. And the feet come forward towards the hands. And then you land on knees bending or legs straight, you choose. And you can either get your toes up on top of your blanket so your heels are on the floor to stretch your calves. If you feel like, oh, you need a bolster under your hands, you could grab your bolster and place it up, tip it up so you have a nice kind of launch. You want the knees apart, okay? This kind of feels pretty good, but I want you to not be too dependent on your bolster because we are going to kind of be moving our leg pattern for a few moments, big stretches through the leg. So if you have your toes up on the blanket, take them back off the blanket, move the blanket a little bit in front so you got some space there, and then let your head lengthen the spine down. So let the weight of your head stretch your spinal column. Okay, feel the purpose of the weight of a head to stretch your back. You can hold the elbows, you can hold the legs, you can let the arms dangle. So give the spine that full reach. Neck, head nod side to side. Now, when you feel that pull of the arms, either the back of the legs or holding the elbows or dangling, let's move so that we can launch a little forward on our hands. And then we're going to move down to the knees. and they're on the blanket, and my hands are kind of in a stretched out position. So we alternate rounding the back, chin towards chest to cat. And then we arch the spine, chest forward, hips back. So take a few of these cat-cow, alternating flexing, spreading across the shoulder blades, and then a little bit of that arching. And the arching could be very subtle. You can work with slow flow of moving the torso. Now, one reason we're doing this mellow kind of arching pattern is that we're going to step a leg forward. So you want to feel how this movement of your spine threads into your hamstrings. Okay, because I know it seems like, well, my spine is not part of my hamstring, but it certainly, the more mobility you have in your back, right, when that has flexibility, it will affect the hamstring as well as the hamstring will affect the back. So let's come back to that neutral space and then get a block set. I always think blocks are best to help me step through. And then step your right foot forward between the blocks, lift up the back knee, stretch the heel back. And we're just going to do a couple lunges before we do legs up, but I want you to get a feel for the right knee above the ankle and that stretch of the left heel back. Okay, if you're really dependent on the blocks, which is reasonable, see if you can work on that steep stretch through the left heel. And then maybe you decide to lower your left heel down and you kind of stretch the front leg, or you stay with the full lunge. That's okay. You decide. Yeah, maybe you kind of wiggle a little forward and back. Wiggle it out. Okay. Knee moves. The back knee doesn't move very much, does it, compared to the front? And then swap the leg. That's the front leg. So bring the left foot forward or vice versa, whatever you had. And then use those blocks in a comforting way. So my blocks are a little low. I mean, I know I can't get them higher than the high height, but you know, just for today's purpose, which is all you got, is to feel the lunge on the left leg. Feel the reach back to that right heel. Just feel the energy of circulation. Maybe you find this leg needs to keep the lunge and that reach through the arch spine. Now motion, breathing, good. Now if the back leg is pressing down through the heel and you have that left leg a little straight, we're all going to meet to a front motion. So I suppose we could all kind of go on our own directional path to get to a legs up position, but here's two different pathways for it. We could take it so that we step back to down dog. We haven't really done that full topic of dog pose today. Or you could step forward to Uttanasana, so you can choose. So you can either go back to down dog without your blocks, hands forward, hips back and up, or you could step forward with your right foot into a standing forward bend, one more of those, to get the legs to feel that circulation. You have just about 15 seconds before we get upside down. It seems like we're upside down right now, though, isn't it? It's true. We are upside down. You know, so for this kind of full flush, we're all fairly practiced, right? Practitioners of this. So when you do get that pattern to go towards the wall, I'm going to recommend, since you're already down, if you can be more down and then get to a wall versus stand all the way up, which is a little much on the blood pressure. So if you're here, I'd rather have you step back, bring the knees down versus get your head all the way up. And then put your bolster next to a wall space, a couch, a bed, anything that you have that you can get your bolster at the base. And then you're going to take a seat at the bolster, moment of a seat, and we'll get a blanket, we'll have a sandbag, we'll have a picnic. And we're going to sit so our seat is right next to the wall, and then swing the legs straight up. Right, next time you have class, you're gonna wanna have a picnic basket. All right. Okay, so as the legs lift and they're supported, that's the big thing, is the support. The drain, reversing the flow of gravity to the heart. You could be sand free if you want on this today. It's taught so often like that it's not required. But you know, sometimes having that weight is helpful to drain, but it could go either way for you today. You choose. The arms have a full direction of evenness. So they're either evenly open or they're evenly back, or cactus is the best option for many of us to keep that even continuity of care for the chest here. And then cycle through the feeling of the pelvis relaxing. Come into the shape, breathe slow. Breathe low in the belly. And exhale out of the mouth. Feel where the weight is through the pelvis on the bolster. And how it's kind of in this tilt, you know, you have this interesting perspective of getting the legs in as much height without disruption and discomfort, right? So your circulation can do this with calmness. So of course, if it isn't calm for you and it's shaky and jittery with the circulation option, or your hamstrings are feeling too much, you can always have your legs up on like a bed or a couch or something where the legs can curl. You still have the hips up. Breathe in, let the abdomen soften, the diaphragm moves down. And then exhale, feel the belly relax towards the floor of the spine. Lots of alternating movements through the torso. Now finally feel all the way up through the spine connection into the back of the brain. And you might make a moment where you have a little sense of that chin relaxing down, right? So that throat circulation is comfortable, but it also is helping that circulation into the thyroid, the parathyroid. So be sure that you feel comfortable here in the upper chest and that circulation into the throat. So you might let your chin relax. Usually that makes a little more sound when you breathe because of where your throat is pitched. Bending the knees. If you have sand on the feet, you're going to shift your feet off of the wall. Bend the knees. And then take the sand off of the feet. And let the knees stay bending, the feet touching the wall. And you might feel that the spine has a different position here than when the legs were straight up. It's pulling you back. So when you're here, can you let the legs guide back towards the chest? So you have that real scoop in the spine. And then let the hands hold the back of the legs. Give a moment here. It's quite the stretch through the spine and the neck. Let it settle in. And then roll to a side and let yourself come up and just help yourself up. And I get a feeling when you help yourself to sitting and we find a collective. So we just come together for a moment with our knees out and the legs in more of that crisscross. And maybe take the crisscross that's not your habit. And then sensing where your hands rest together in front of the heart. Brain bows to the heart center and surrender there.